Good afternoon and welcome to the Envision IT Office 365 Productivity Series. This afternoon we're going to be talking about user experience, branding, and navigation. Do quick intros here. My name is Peter Carson. I'm the president of Envision IT, also a SharePoint MVP and Microsoft partner seller. Contact information is here. The deck and the recording is going to be posted up on our website, so you'll be able to pull that down afterwards and get all the details from there. We'll also include links and such as part of the presentation deck. Oops, clicking on one of those links. There we go. Next up, also have Peter McKenzie online. Pete is our VP of Sales and Marketing. He'll be your prime point of contact. Any follow-up if you've seen something that piques your interest, looking for some help getting that done. I'm happy to do that with you, and Pete will be your prime point of contact for that. Okay, quick agenda of what we're going to be going over here. We've got an overview of Envision IT, fairly brief just to introduce things, and then we'll get right into experience and branding. We'll do a couple of case studies, a little bit of live demo, and then we'll switch over to navigation and continue the discussion and the case studies from there. We are open for Q&A throughout the process, so feel free to post your questions. Pete and Amanda are both online. They'll do their best to answer questions, and we'll take a pause towards the end of the session just to catch up and see if there's anything we need to address through there. So single slide, quick background on Envision IT. We are Office 365 productivity consultants. We're focused on SharePoint, obviously, from an intranet, extranet, and collaboration point of view, but really pivoting that into the cloud productivity space with Microsoft as they change their business, focusing on Office 365, SharePoint Online, and Microsoft Azure. We've got over 24 years of experience, been working with SharePoint for over 10 years as well. Gold partner and multiple award winner. We'll actually talk about some of the recent awards that we just come up for with one of our case studies in here. In addition to the four main key areas, we've got some services around health checks, around Office 365 and Azure Cloud Services, accessibility for Ontario Disability Act compliance, upgrades and migrations, training, mobile adaptive design, support agreements to support your organization, solution architecture, and workflows and forms. So lots of different areas across the whole SharePoint and cloud productivity stack. So before we dive into things, I just want to get a quick sense from an audience point of view of what people's familiarity are with Office 365 and what products do they use today. So I'm just going to open up the polls here. And go ahead and launch that out. So you can answer to more than one if you're doing multiple stacks within Office 365. I mean, a lot of people start with Exchange and email. SharePoint often comes later, although we've had organizations go the other way where they have their email on premises, but they go straight into SharePoint Online. So it can mix up from there. OneDrive, Yammer from an enterprise social point of view, Skype for Business, even the Office client applications themselves are available online rather than installed on your PC. So I'll give you another 15-20 seconds if you can just respond back to that, and what I'll do is I'll share the responses back. We're going to make today's session somewhat interactive. We're going to have quite a few of these polls as we go through. Some of them are to poll like this, how you're using Microsoft technologies today. Some of them actually to get some feedback on ideas that we're going to be presenting and different options, get a sense of which resonate with who and what's bubbling up from a validation point of view. All right, so let me go ahead and close that out. Just share that back. So in terms of what we're seeing, folks actually using Office Online, so that's interesting to see, using Word, Excel, PowerPoint in the browser. Exchange, close to 2/3. That's not surprising. As I mentioned, Exchange tends to be the dominant workload for Office 365. Obviously, with this topic here today being focused on the SharePoint Online side of things, lots of you using SharePoint Online already, and OneDrive as well, closely related to that. About a third of the audience using Yammer, which is great to see. We're going to switch to one more poll here, and what I want to do is focus now down into SharePoint Online. So within the stack of what is SharePoint Online inside of Office 365, there's OneDrive for Business, which is built on top of that. There's building your corporate intranet, team or project sites, or extranet sites. So if you can give me a sense of, how are you planning to use SharePoint Online within Office 365 going forward? That'll give us a sense how to tailor what we're going to be talking about today as well. All right, a few more to vote. I'll give you another 15 seconds or so. That would be great. And then again, I'll share this back around. All right, can I just close that out? Go ahead and share that again. So corporate internet leading the pack. Interesting, we've actually got quite a number of clients that we're starting corporate internet projects for. Most intended to be on SharePoint on-premises, but with recent announcements around the Canadian data centers and such, we're actually seeing a strong uptick in interest in moving those into Office 365. There's a lot of advantages to that in terms of new features and functionality, which obviously come out in the cloud first, well ahead of when we're going to see those, if in fact at all, from an on-premises SharePoint point of view. Team and project sites behind that, and then evenly split between OneDrive for Business and extranet. I actually gave an extranet webinar this morning. If you didn't catch or aware of that, that will be available for streaming as well. Give you a sense of what's possible from an extranet point of view in Office 365. Okay, so let me just hide that in. We'll come back into our deck here. And as I mentioned, the first part of the session is really going to be around experience and branding, and what does that mean. So let's come into our presentation here. And I'm actually going to lift from a session that I was at down at Microsoft Ignite, which was the beginning of May in Chicago. It was really the combination of what used to be the SharePoint conference, Exchange conference, and a number of other technical conferences that Microsoft puts on. And the great thing when Microsoft does these events is they record all the sessions, and they make all the decks available. So I've included the link here if you want to see the whole presentation. The hour-long event is available for streaming on Channel 9, which is part of MSDN. But there's about a dozen or so slides from Visa's deck that I want to reference just to give some background before we dive into our own approaches here. So just starting with some of Visa's recommendations, and really it's coming down to, if at all possible, avoiding custom master pages. And I'll explain in a minute why and what that means, where you want to use themes, alternate CSS, maybe some JavaScript embedding to do things that maybe you would have traditionally done in custom master pages without heavily customizing Office 365. Now, I included this one, not that I necessarily agree with it. I just wanted to give some context for where some of the thoughts are coming from a Redmond point of view, which is, you don't brand Outlook or Word. Why do you need to do branding on a collaboration site? Well, the reality is that these are the corporate portals for our clients, and they want to see their corporate brand in as part of that. So I think saying, well, we're just going to take blue and white standard Microsoft out of the box is maybe not the right approach. But if we can live within the boundaries of doing fairly minimal branding, there's certainly some advantages to that. Because you have to look at the cost versus gain in terms of how deep and how far you go from a branding point of view. And really it's around future maintenance, that rather than using custom master pages, using the alternate methods that we're going to discuss, it makes future updates cause less of a problem. And also how you even deploy those features in terms of, do you create feature framework elements, sandbox solutions, things like that, which traditionally is how many organizations, including ourselves, use to deploy branding elements. You really need to rethink about how those should be done. I'm not going to get too deep into the deployment side. We're actually going to save that for a potential future session. So really it comes down to the constant evolution of the user experience in Office 365. Microsoft publicly declared that they're becoming more agile, and we're really seeing the results coming from that. Gone are the days of a 3-year product release cycle when it comes to cloud hosted, not even 3 months or 3 weeks. I mean, often we're seeing things week to week changing from a small feature set and release point of view. Now, Microsoft does publish a public Office 365 roadmap, so you can see what that rollout plan looks like. And they have what's called rings. So they've got early start for people that want to get the very first new releases coming out. It's actually important for organizations like us, where we're supporting our clients on 365. We want to see those new features before they do, so we can understand what's the impact to that. Do we need to mitigate anything there, or is there something we can take advantage of and be ahead of the curve before they're discovering those features themselves? And you can be all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where you say, you know what, I want to be the very last ring that gets upgraded and migrated. I want the minimal impact to my organization. There's pros and cons both ways. So this is kind of a view of SharePoint Online circa sort of 2013 timeframe. So we've gone to the new equivalent to SharePoint 2013 interface and look and feel of SharePoint And you can see there's things across the top like the news feed, the OneDrive, and the sites, links to other features within Office 365. And then a little while later that changed and got expanded. Microsoft said, well, we want to have some sort of launch bar where people can go directly from their SharePoint sites into their Outlook email or their calendar, so let's put those links across the top. Not surprisingly, a little while later, back in last fall, they realized, you know what, we're getting too many links to put across the top there. It just doesn't literally fit on there. And they changed it to an app launcher that flies out from the waffle in the top left corner, and you can launch out apps from there. You can even add your own apps to this list, and I'll talk about how we do that as part of the session. So obviously, as these changes happen, that has an impact on custom master pages and things that you've done within your site. You may not see these features come through properly, or it may break your site altogether, depending on the changes that you've done. So I want to try and minimize that impact as the user experience continues to evolve from Microsoft. And it's not just from a SharePoint point of view. Yes, you can apply a look and feel to your SharePoint Online sites, but what about things like Yammer, where you do your enterprise social, or Delve, where you do information discovery? I mean, these are tightly related in with there. Are you looking to completely rebrand all of those as well? Can you apply a theme across all of that? How do you provide a unified user experience across that? So a lot of Lisa's points was around please don't use custom master pages, and really the reasoning behind that is, if you look at the development of a custom master page, it starts by copying an out-of-the-box one, a Seattle or an Oslo that comes out of the box with SharePoint Online. You create your copy, you modify it, but then under the hood, there's service updates and releases from Microsoft, and those base master pages start to actually change, and there's new features that get lit up within them. But your master page hasn't kept pace with that. You're still based on the one from several versions ago, and obviously that eventually becomes an issue where things start to break or you don't see the new features within there. So you have to basically go back to the out-of-the-box and redo your customizations from there. So that's really the goal for avoiding that. You might say, well, I've always customized by using custom master page. What's changed about that? Nothing's actually changed. I mean, it's the same issue you see if you built a site with custom master page in SharePoint 2007, and then you upgraded it to 2010, you had to throw out that master page and start a new 2010 one. And then when you upgraded from 2010 to 2013, you had to do it again. But the reality is those upgrades happened at best every 3 years. It might have been every 4 or 5 or 6 years. You might even skip right from 2007 to 2013. So you didn't incur that impact that often. It's different in the cloud because those changes are happening much more rapidly with the agile development that's happening with Microsoft. So you say, well, I have an internet portal. I want to do those heavy branding customizations. I want a strong publishing portal with our look and feel stamped all over that. Can I still do that? Absolutely. You're still fully supported having a custom master page and doing a whole hog branding as part of that. Just be aware of what the caveats are through there. And if you can achieve it without doing that, just using alternative approaches, maybe consider that. That may be a path to take. So if we look at the spectrum of branding options for SharePoint sites, we'll start at the very simple, which is applying what's called an Office 365 theme. So this is something you apply across all of the 365 services. There's not a lot that you can do there. You can pick some colors and a logo, that's about it. But it does then present itself not just in SharePoint, but in Yammer, in Delve, and the various different Office 365 services. Now it obviously only applies online with 365, and it's fairly limited from a flexibility point of view. But it's very easy as well. There's not a lot of costs or maintenance involved in that. Next up from that is what's called a SharePoint theme, where you apply that just to SharePoint Online. You can go a little bit further in terms of the color controls, the fonts, background images, and such that you can apply to each site with that theme. And the nice thing here is it's not just for Office 365. It applies to SharePoint on-premises as well. And there's advantages to taking this approach and saying, well, we're going to use that for our on-premises, knowing that in the future we may move to the cloud or we may run hybrid where we're running both environments. We can have a single solution across both of those. Also, both on-premise and in the cloud is using an alternate CSS. So you can actually move things around, change the behavior of items within the master page and the site as a whole through the cascading style sheets, where you can apply your own CSS file to that. So you can do a lot there. We'll talk about responsive and what you can do from a mobile support point of view. So very flexible from that point of view. And then obviously there is the custom master page where you got full control. You're able to change not just the CSS, but the HTML markup itself, and completely change the structure of the site from there. So it's fairly unlimited from a flexibility point of view, more cost associated with that, and more future impact from a changes to 365's perspective. So that's kind of the spectrum of the branding options. So let's start with the simplest, the Office 365 theme. So you can control some high-level branding settings, and as I mentioned, it applies across the full stack. So if you want to provide a consistent brand across Yammer, Delve, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, that's something you can do with an Office 365 theme. So this is what the theme page looks like. You can decide a custom logo that you want to present in there. That can have a URL that you can click through if you need to maybe have your corporate intranet be the launchpad back from the logo, so people have a way to get back to that. Background images and colors, but that's really the extent of it. You can't go much further than this. It does give you some flexibility, though, to apply that theme across all of those services. Next up is SharePoint Teams. So this is getting a little more granular in terms of what elements you're able to customize without actually changing the master page. So you still use the out-of-the-box master page, but apply branding to that. So you've got color, font, and background images that you have control of through the themes. And as we get further into the case studies, I'm actually going to flip out to a couple of the case references and give you an idea of what this actually looks like. So we've got actually a free downloadable tool. I'm actually going to take you through using this, where you can actually set up your own color palette. So you can have very granular control of the different elements, create the color file, and then upload that into SharePoint and use it as part of your theme. Next up is using an alternate CSS. So here you can control individual elements and either move items around, change how they appear, change the look and feel and interactions through there. You're getting into the more custom side, so even though we're not doing a custom master page, this does depend on elements being tagged in a certain way. And we've seen issues in the past where the CSS tags for elements in the out-of-the-box master pages actually change as those evolve. And that can potentially break the alternate CSS. So even though you're not using a custom master page, you're still starting to get into the realm of areas where changes in the core SharePoint Online by Microsoft actually affect the changes that you're doing in your alternate CSS. So just be aware on the spectrum of where we're starting to get into from a customization point of view. Now there's some interesting examples of how you can use this, and I'm going to show you this again in one of our case studies. Heather Solomon's a fellow MVP. She's done a great job of creating an alternate CSS to make the out-of-the-box Seattle.master page more responsive. Now it doesn't take it all the way, and I'll explain as we get in what some of the caveats are and changes are within that. And then we've got our custom master page. So here, we're replacing the out-of-the-box master page. We've got complete control over the design. We upload it, we set the master page, and we now control the user experience through that. So that's from Microsoft's point of view. That was coming out of the Ignite session. And what I've done is distill this down into what our recommendations are to our clients. What are we proposing to our clients in terms of what they do from a branding point of view? And really whether it applies to SharePoint on-premises, SharePoint 2013, or in Office 365, the same recommendations apply. So first and foremost, from a user experience and branding point of view, what are some of the things that we're looking to achieve? I mean, we want to have creative designs. We want to make engaging sites that draw your staff in, draw your partners in as part of that. We want to have both simple and rich branding approaches as sort of two ends of the spectrum through there. But across both of those approaches, consistent navigation is a big thing. People want to be able to navigate from anywhere to anywhere across site collections, between services in 365. How do we make that a seamless, consistent experience for them? Responsive has gotten very important as well. Folks are coming to expect a bring your own device experience that they can browse through these sites, interact with them, not only through their desktop PC, but also through their tablet and through their smartphone. So how do we make the site respond and adapt to those different sized browsers and devices? Accessibility considerations, thinking about AODA, and a consistent approach I mentioned from an on-premise versus Office 365 point of view. Let's take the same approach and let's not really worry about which of those two cases it's going to be. It may transition between them. It may be a hybrid across both of them at the same point in time. So we want a simple, consistent approach across both of those. So there's really the two ends of the spectrum that we want to focus on. So from a simple branding point of view, we'd like to avoid doing any sort of custom master page. Really the only example where we want to do any sort of customization on the master page is if we want to introduce different navigation controls. And we'll talk about that in the latter half of the session in terms of why we'd want to do that. So for the most part, we want to leverage themes and alternate CSS, so those middle two of the four ends of the spectrum that Lisa was going over in his talk, and that really minimizes the risk of things, Microsoft changes, breaking or affecting things in the site, particularly in Office 365. So this is really ideal for collaboration sites. I mean, you don't want to go too far from a branding point of view if it's just a team site, project sites where people come in and collaborate. Yes, you do want to have your corporate brand in there, but let's minimize the changes required for that. And then doing things like leveraging Bootstrap and Heather Solomon's responsive CSS to provide at least some responsive experience through there. Again, caveats to be aware of from that point of view. So that's sort of our first approach. And if we're looking at a client that's looking to create collaborative team sites, this is our strong recommendation of the direction we should be going in. The other end of the spectrum where we want to do rich branding would be more around a formal corporate intranet, where it's more of a communications portal for the departments and the communications team, often HR, to communicate out to the organization as a whole. Think of it as an employee portal. We really want to put our mark on that and build a brand around that. So we're likely going to be doing a custom master page in CSS for that, so we've got that full control of the user experience. We're absolutely going to want to leverage Bootstrap, which is an open source framework from the folks at Twitter. It's a great way to build a responsive site that works well on smartphones, tablets, and PCs. And really the rich branding approach is ideal for both public-facing websites and publishing intranets. It's still supported for Office 365, as Lisa said. You can still do this. Just be aware that updates may break things, and you may want to have a test or a dev tenant within SharePoint 365 as an early start ring that it gets those updates first. You can actually see whether that impacts your site, so that by the time it ripples down to your main production site, you've already addressed it and you're ready for it, and away you go from there. Now, how do you deploy branding out? You can manually deploy it, and I'm actually going to demonstrate how that happens as we go through the session. But really, you want to script that and make that repeatable. So we're actually starting to dig quite a bit into the patterns and practices that Microsoft's been publishing. So this is all around supporting Office 365 development. Our patterns and practices have been strongly focused on PowerShell as a deployment model, and we're continuing down that path. So we pulled down all the bits from here. Part of what they support is a number of PowerShell applets that provide sort of easy ways to deploy things like branding files up into Office 365. So it's a great way to package that together. And I'll talk about future sessions. This is one that I'm curious if there's interest in pursuing, to say, okay, well, let's go deeper from a scripting and a deployment point of view, because we've done a lot of work on this side to make that a seamless process for all of our clients. What I'd like to do now, before we dive into the navigation side, is actually jump ahead. I need to maybe resort my deck as I'm thinking about it here. But I'm going to go ahead to a couple of examples and then come back to the navigation side. The first one I want to start with is actually our Envision Shakespeare company. So this is a fictional theater company website that we've created. We really use it as our reference architecture as we're starting projects. All of our scripts, our different components, way of doing things, even open source components that we leverage are all packaged up into this site. And traditionally, this has been done from an on-premises point of view. So I flip over to my browser here for a second. Let's come into our Envision Shakespeare company site here. You can hit this URL, shakespearedev.envisionit.com. It'll bring you into the site. We got lots of rich content around cross-site publishing and such. But we do have a custom master page and a custom navigation deployed as part of this site. So I can drill down into various items. We've got friendly URLs. We've got the breadcrumb. We've got the content of the site coming in through there. We've got a header and a footer section that are defined through the custom master page. It is fully responsive, so we're leveraging Bootstrap. So if I size this down, we can see we've come down into a tablet mode where we've stacked the items up in a vertical stack rather than 3-column across. If I come further down, you see our nav gets replaced by the smartphone nav rather than the flyout navigation on there. So it adapts to the different devices that it's on through there. And that all happens through the CSS, through the magic of the Bootstrap framework that we're leveraging in as part of that. So we've been working lately on, well, how do we take this and lift this and move this into SharePoint Online? What's involved in doing that? So we actually have a site up here. Let me just pull up the link here for a second. So this is actually hosted in Office 365. We can see we've got the 365 banner across the top in there. It's not publicly available, so you can't come to this site yourself because 365 doesn't support public-facing sites anymore. You may be grandfathered, but that's being decommissioned over the next year or so. So this is really focused on internal internet sites. But all of the same publishing metaphors that we've applied here apply in Office 365 as well. So we've actually taken the exact same custom master page that we used on premises in SharePoint 2013 and deployed it up into Office 365. We used the patterns and practices components from Microsoft to simplify that and make that an automated process. We can see we've got the same navigation, we've got the same friendly URLs. I can drill down into the site from there, and we're down in a site collection within our 365 tenant. Some of the content hasn't gotten fully loaded yet, images missing and such like that. So you can get a sense of how that operates from there. And we've still got the same responsive experience that we had when we were on the on-premises side. So it doesn't matter where we're working within that, that all hangs together and works from that point of view. So Bootstrap is equally valuable from an online cloud point of view as it is from an on-premise point of view. Interesting, we actually just got this site fully up and running yesterday, doing some last-minute scripting and such to get it together. And I was actually quite pleasantly surprised. So all the cross-site publishing that we're doing for doing news and events roll-ups and things like that, that code actually worked right out of the box. The search crawler found everything, and the way we're doing that all came together as well. And that, again, is another suggested topic for future, is how we do that cross-site publishing and wire that together. But again, that all applies equally well from an Office 365 point of view as it does from an on-premises point of view. So pretty much everything you can do from a brand perspective is equally possible online in the cloud as it is from an on-premises perspective. Now, that's sort of the extreme scenario where we're doing a full custom master page and we're taking over everything from there. Let me come back to my deck. I want to take you through another scenario here. So L3 Westchem, a client of ours down in Burlington, they're a defense contractor, top 10 worldwide from a sensor surveillance equipment point of view. So they make the cameras that go on drone aircraft, on tanks, on boats, and things like that. So it's some pretty cool technology. A lot of engineering, a lot of manufacturing going on there. And their internet is obviously very focused around that from a department point of view. So there is a clear site structure. It's easy to navigate. And this screenshot that I'm showing you here is from the internet that we built for them about 3 years ago on-premise in SharePoint 2010. It was very much a rich publishing model. You can see we've got a full custom master page in there. The look and feel is very unique. So it's almost like a public-facing website from that point of view. We've got the full search in there. We've got custom web parts, surfacing up content as part of that. But then they approached us a couple months ago to say, look, we're ready to move to 2013. We'd like some help on that side. We were in the process of kind of getting our thoughts together on where we're going from a branding point of view. And we strongly recommended, you know what, why don't we simplify things, not go so whole hog from a custom master page point of view. So what I have in here is a development site. We're still currently working on this with L3, but you can see that the look and feel is much, much simpler. So we've gone from, you know, complete master page, everything is custom look and feel in there, to something that's actually pretty close to out of the box. I mean, we're using not the standard navigation. We actually have our own navigation control. We'll talk about that in the latter part of the session. But we've just got basically a theme applied to the site. We've incorporated Heather Solomon's responsive CSS work into this. But other than that, this is an out-of-the-box Seattle master page that we're using as part of this. So the advantage there is, you know, obviously cheaper to build, but also cheaper to maintain going forward as things change. They're currently staying on-premise, but that may change. They may end up in the cloud. It's very easy to lift this and bring this across without a lot of rework. it certainly supports what's being done in the cloud from that point of view. Now, just to give you a quick sense on the responsive side, so this is the the standard default page that you get out of the box when you create a team site in SharePoint 2013. We've left it there as an example, including this web part here that shows some tips on how to get started with your site. So if I size my site down, you can see that things like the web parts are not responsive. They weren't built for those images to stack up on top of each other, so they do end up having to scroll left and right through those. But you can see that the navigation itself, we went from having the top level left nav here. If I bring this down, we've gone into that same smartphone nav view here, and we've removed the left-hand navigation. So we've made it more of a vertical scrolling, which is much more user-friendly from a smartphone perspective. And that, for the most part, was done using Heather's alternate CSS. We did some additional tweaks on that to improve on that for this particular situation, but it got basically the navigation and the elimination of the current nav on the left there as part of that. But what if we wanted to go a little further with that? Well, what we did, let me just size this back up again, is created some custom page layouts for them. So this doesn't require a custom master page. You can use the out-of-the-box master page. But we can see here, if I edit this page, and I come into my page layouts here, so we've created a number of L3 layouts. We've got a landing page, we've got a left and right columns, and a 3-column layout. These are all built being aware of Bootstrap from a responsive CSS point of view. So they have the appropriate class tags in there so that they work properly from that point of view. Let me just discard my changes here. So now if I size this page down, not only do we get the smartphone navigation style coming in there, but you can see that the 2 columns have actually stacked up on top of each other as one. So as I size that up, first our navigation comes back from a tablet point of view, but we're still a single column view. So imagine that I'm on a portrait iPad at this point. It's still a nice viewing experience from that point of view. And then as I make it wider from there, it snaps in and we get the 2-column view on a wider desktop view. So it responds to the device that it's on, provides a great user experience from that point of view. So again, I mean, this is our preferred simplistic approach. We did do a custom master page, but the only changes we did to it was to include our own navigation control, and I'll explain why in a bit on that side. So let's actually flip over onto the navigation side here. So there's a number of ways that you can do navigation. I mean, there's out-of-the-box nav that comes with SharePoint, and there's both what's called structured and managed navigation. So you can use the term store to define your navigation, and that's really our preferred approach. That's a feature that showed up in SharePoint 2013. We've become big fans of that. So let me just show you under the hood of what that means. So if I come back to our on-premises SharePoint site, let me just log into the site. So the first thing to recognize here is as I drill down through the site, you can see the URL structure. I'm in /about us/contact us. We've got a breadcrumb there. We have what appears to be a hierarchy of sites and structure to our site here. So if I look at my site contents, I'll see that the structure is actually very flat. So we're actually separating how the visitor to the site sees the structure versus how the content author sees it. So we see here there's actually no subsites whatsoever in this particular site, and all the pages are actually in this one pages library. Actually makes it easier for the content author. I mean, if you get into massive intranets with thousands and thousands of pages managed by different departments, yes, it makes sense to create subsites and start to divide that up. But for a smaller site, this makes a lot of sense to keep it all together. It's very quick and easy to scroll through these pages, see who last modified something on there, filter it based on the page layout or the content type, and create your views out from there. But then how do you create that virtual structure that we saw and expose that out to the site visitor? Well, that's actually done through the term store. So if I come into my site settings and down into term store management, we'll see that we've got a site navigation element in here. And you'll notice that the navigation that I see across the top here it's actually driving right at that term store. So I look at what's under About Us with Artistic Director and Contact Us, and I come down to the term store, actually see the exact same hierarchy there. It's very simple. If I decide, you know what, I don't want to have Contact Us under About Us, I want to put it somewhere different in the site, I can literally just move the term, pick a different location for it. It will move in the top navigation, and it will also move in the virtual structure of the site. So it really separates how you logically organize your content versus how you physically keep the pages together from a content author point of view. And then under the hood, if I look at that Artistic Director, from a navigation point of view, we say, yes, we want this to show in the nav, and we want to use the friendly URLs. I mentioned before, we saw that up in the top URL. Yes, I don't want to save my changes. And we can see the URL that the end users are going to see as site visitors versus where is that page actually being stored through there. So that's the underlying location for the page. But if I come in here, we actually see the friendly URL for that. You can see deeper in, if you go into the ribbon, how that's getting exposed and where that's coming through. So I have the option to come into my page URLs and see that, yes, this is the physical address and this is the friendly URL. You can have multiple URLs for the same page. Just need to be careful, particularly from a public site point of view, you get into SEO issues from that perspective. So that's sort of a quick on what we're doing with navigation. Now the nav that we see here is the out-of-the-box navigation controls. We're on a system page here, we haven't overridden that. If I come back onto this page here, we've got our own navigation control that renders this nav out. Main reason for that is we want this nav to be friendly with Bootstrap from a responsive point of view. So as I size my screen, as the nav changes, it needs a certain HTML format for that. The out-of-the-box SharePoint doesn't quite give us that. So our control lets us render exactly the structure of the HTML that we need for that. And that works quite well from an on-premises point of view. Now the issue is that is a server-side control, so that's something that we can only do from an on-premises perspective. So recently we've created a client-side control that does the same thing through JavaScript, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute in one of our other case studies. It does have some challenges there in that the whole page needs to load first before you see the navigation appear. We can do some caching to improve that, but it still snaps in a little later. So that's one of the complaints from that point of view. But both controls, and this is a big thing, support having multiple site collections against the one term store. So if you've got a big site with a lot of separate site collections, like L3, they have department site collections for each of their departments. They wanted a single nav across all of that. You can do that out of the box, but it gets messy. You have to basically copy all of your terms in your term store, you pin them. And we've had problems with those getting corrupted, not working well. So we're not a big fan of that. So our control allows you to point all of those site collections against one term store, makes it much simpler from a creation point of view. And certainly the client control was built to support Office 365, and we'll talk about that in one of our examples. So that's really where we're at from a navigation point of view. So let's flip back now to the case studies. I skipped over this one when we were getting into the branding side. This was actually one of our very early Office 365 implementations. We started this as a 2007 to 2013 migration project, and early days in the project, the client decided, you know what, the cloud is actually a very compelling argument from a licensing, from a cost point of view, from a not having to maintain our own infrastructure perspective. Let's forget about 2013. We hadn't built their production farm or anything yet. Let's just move right into the cloud with Office 365. So previous webinar had a whole session about the migration story and what that looked like and some of the challenges we had there. We didn't talk about the branding side of it. So this was early days for us. This was about 18 months ago that we were doing the work on here. Didn't really have the experience from the branding point of view, so we did what we always do, which is create a custom master page for this. Challenge was that things were changing under the hood a fair bit with SharePoint Online, and even after we launched the site out, periodically we'd have reports saying, oh, you know, our orange bar just went blue because Microsoft changed something in 365, or something got broken, the app launcher is not showing up, you know, things like that. So the clear cautions that Microsoft was calling out, we were seeing happening in this particular client. In hindsight, knowing what we know today, we probably recommend that we do this strictly with a theme, maybe a little bit of alternate CSS, because the navigation is actually out of the box SharePoint nav, so we didn't need a custom control through that. So this is something that we quite easily achieve with that more minimal experience through there. We'd still get the look and feel that they're looking for here. We just wouldn't be as beholden to any changes and impact that that has from Microsoft's point of view. We talked about the Shakespeare Company from a full custom master page, and L3 going from a custom master page to more of a lightly branded site. So let's actually take you through that scenario of what's involved in doing that light branding. So what I've got here, if I come back to our main site, we're actually running a hybrid scenario here in Envision IT right now. So this is our main corporate intranet portal we use to run all of our projects. We have all our clients in here. This is our extranet as well. And it's all an on-premises SharePoint 2013. Our goal is to move it into Office 365. We've already started doing that. So if I come down into my product section and into Extranet User Manager, this whole line of business has all moved into the cloud. So you see the URL here is now envisionit.sharepoint.com. So I know as soon as I see that .sharepoint.com, I'm on an Office 365 site, and we've got a site collection for Extranet User Manager. Now, EUM has its own unique brand there, so we've actually applied a theme and a logo to that to provide that brand across. You'll notice the navigation is consistent. So from a hybrid experience point of view, if I click Home, I'm actually back in my on-premises. So you can build a nice hybrid solution, use a common branding and navigation across that, and quickly flip back and forth between on-premise and Office 365. Other than seeing a change in the URL, it's very transparent to the end users. Now my next step is actually to take the main top level of the site and actually move that into Office 365. So let's have a look at what that would look like. So if I come back in here, I just take the site collection path off of that and just go to the root of the site. If I haven't done anything with the top level site collection at this point, it is literally just an out-of-the-box site collection from Microsoft. It's got the blue and white branding on there, the ones that some folks at Microsoft would say, why would you want to change that? But we want to at least bring some of the Envision IT brand into our site. So what's involved in doing that? Well, we've got actually a tool provided by Microsoft. Sorry, where are we here? I think I've lost that link there. Okay, so let me just bring the tool up itself. So it's called the SharePoint Color Palette tool. And basically it's for you to create your theme for your SharePoint Online. So you can see we've got a number of different buckets that apply to different parts of the site that I can manually set my colors to as part of that. But let's say I don't want to go through that full exercise. I want to do something fairly quick and simple. So I'm going to bring up our Envision IT site. So we've got our logo on there. Let me bring that on one side and the color palette tool on the other side. So let's say we want to use this green from our Envision IT logo as our color theme for our site. I can actually go to the color picker here, grab the eyedropper, and literally just position it over that icon there to pick up that color. Go ahead and hit OK and click Recolor. And it basically creates variations off of that color theme and applies it to our site here. So you can see in the preview what this is going to look like from a SharePoint Online point of view. And then I can go ahead and save that color file. So I've already got one saved here called eit.spcolor. What I need to do next is actually load that up into SharePoint Online. Let me come back to our out-of-the-box site that we have here. If I come to my site settings and into my themes, I literally just drag and drop that file up into the theme library. So you can see here we've got our eit.spcolor. That's precisely the file that I just saved out of this color palette tool here. So I've already got it uploaded earlier today. I won't go through that process again. But the next step that we need to do now is come back to our site settings and say we have to create what's called a composed look. So the themes deals with the colors and the fonts. The composed looks wraps that together for the SharePoint site as a whole. So we can see here we've got our Envision IT composed look that I've created. It points to the out-of-the-box master page that we're going to use, and it points to that color file that I've created there as well. We can also have a background image if we want. I don't particularly want one on this site, so I'm going to leave that blank. or a font file if we want to play with the fonts. Again, we're going to leave that as default. So now we've got our composed look defined for the site. I do my third step, just come back to my site settings, and I say I want to change the look. So this is going to bring up a list of composed looks that are available on the site. So we'll see all the out-of-the-box ones. We'll see the current site that's applied there. And we see there's our Envision IT composed look that we created with our color theme as part of that. So I can go ahead and pick that. What it's going to do is give me a preview here. I can drop a background image in if I want. I can play and tweak with the fonts and colors, but generally you're going to want to build the theme in a way that you just apply it and work with it from there. Let's go ahead and try that out. So now it's applying that theme to our top-level site collection that we have. And it does it from a preview point of view first, and then once I'm happy with that, I can commit to that. So we're getting our preview coming up. Say, yep, that looks good. Let's keep it. We'll go ahead and commit that. And presto, we have our Envision IT colors coming through as part of that. Now we still have a standard out-of-the-box SharePoint logo there. I need to do that as a separate step. So I can come into the title, description, and logo. I can actually go to my computer and just browse and grab a logo file. I happen to have one there handy. Say OK. There's our Envision IT logo, and say OK on that. So now we have Envision IT in there. We've got our color themes across there. I can come back to the home page of the site. We now have our Envision IT theme applied to that. We're still using the out-of-the-box navigation. We haven't done anything from that point of view. We could certainly extend the navigation out of the box with the term store, or we could, if we wanted to, look at putting our own custom navigation control in there. All right, so let's come back to our deck now. Got mixed around as to where I am. Bear with me a sec. So I want to dive into another case study here, which is the Ontario Associations of Children's Aid Societies. So this is also an Office 365 solution. It's actually an extranet solution. We won an award at the Ignite conference for Best Governance Solution. We also just got announced as a finalist for the INCP Awards for a Community Award for this site. So it's getting a lot of press, a lot of interest through there. So basically what's happening, OCAS is a member organization for the 8,000 staff and volunteers that work for the 40-odd children's aid societies across the province of Ontario. Need to update, this is actually well above 1,200 documents now in the site, so it's getting populated and growing through there. We've got dynamic pages, we've got our site navigation control in there, we have a responsive site design coming in through that. So let's actually go into the site itself and have a look at what that looks like. I'm actually going to do that through Chrome because I don't want to be in two different Office 365s at the same time in one browser. We'll go to ocas.sharepoint.com. First thing, we're actually using our extranet user manager for the login here. So we've got a full customized registration, onboarding process for those staff and volunteers out at the member societies. Let me go ahead and sign in though and bring the site up. So just like I was showing you before on the Shakespeare site, we're actually using the term store to drive the navigation here as well. You may not have noticed there, let me just do a refresh on the page. You'll see the page render, and then you'll see the navigation snap in after that. And the reason that's happening is that the page has to fully load before the JavaScript can run to go get the navigation and put it up on the site. We do cache it in local storage on the browser, so the next time you come through, it does happen quicker, but there's still that delay and lag through there. So that's one of the challenges with the nav control that we've created there. We're kind of locked in. There's only so much we can do. We can't have full trust solutions happening back on the server because Microsoft doesn't want us running any of our code on their servers. Not surprisingly, that makes a lot of sense. As I drill down into the sections of the site, let's say go down into member services, Aboriginal services, it's using the same idea as Shakespeare where there's just a single site at the top level, all the content is tagged and organized in there, and then we use the term store to build out the structure of the site from there. So we have our top navigation, our breadcrumb, and our left nav all based on where we are in those friendly URLs through there. So a nice experience from that point of view. The challenge that we're having right now, though, is occasionally there's a lot of work that happens in the browser to render that navigation the first time before it caches it. Sometimes that doesn't work 100%, and people don't see the navigation. Maybe 10-20% of the time that's happening. When they refresh their page, eventually it'll work and it'll go in their cache and they're fine forward from there, but not an ideal user experience from that point of view. So we're actually suggesting some alternatives there, where instead of having script that determines the nav and renders it for every user that comes into the site, that we actually push that back onto the content author. That when they're in the admin section of the site, they're updating the term store for the navigation, they hit a link in there and it actually generates the navigation as a static copy and stores it in the site itself. And then all the site visitors can just go against that. So a nice way to maybe balance between some of the challenges that we have with some of the client-side scripts and the performance side of it, and having the nav render up a little quicker from there. Caveat is that it does require the content author to do a second step. They do their nav changes, and then they click an admin link in order to refresh that and push that out for everybody to see that. We don't see that as a big deal on that. It shouldn't be a challenge for them from a content authoring point of view. All right, let's come back to the slideshow. We're actually running a little tight on time. We've only got about 9 minutes left here. So I'm actually going to skip over a couple of other ones in here, but I want to talk a bit about them just briefly. So Travel Corporation, if you're familiar with Contiki, if you did European traveling as a student, odds are you may have traveled with them, a number of different brands around the world there. They actually are using both Yammer and SharePoint Online extensively from an intranet and collaborative environment. So we've created a custom look and feel around that and a brand. We did Canada first. We did it in a way that they can then build on that themselves and launch out into other locations, Europe, Australia being the next ones that they're looking at doing there. It's a very compelling, very creative design. I mean, it is adaptive experience, so it's great from a smartphone point of view, which obviously as travelers themselves, people working in the organization, that's critical and important as well. Pathways to Education. This is a site we just recently launched out. We kept it fairly minimal. I mean, we've got some things like a custom image rotator that we built in as part of that. That's all very easily done through some open source and client-side code. Some news web part that highlights up the latest articles. It gives you a fresh, clean look to that without going too far on the customization side. So those are a couple of other examples of what that looks like. What I do want to do, though, is get some feedback. We want to validate the path that we're taking and what we're looking at here. So I'm going to do a quick poll here and get a sense of, based on what you've seen, the different projects that we've got in there, what branding approaches do you think you'd be most likely to implement? Let me go ahead and launch that out. So just to recap while you're thinking about that, the Office 365 theme is very simple, but it applies across the full set of services. The SharePoint themes, that was the color picker that I was showing you, where you can build out a color map, load it up, apply your logo in there, and have a sort of a lightly branded site through there. Alternate CSSs, where you can bring in responsive, tweak things a little bit more, change the look and feel even of the out-of-the-box 365 components, and then going to full-on custom master page, where we have carte blanche to basically do anything through there. So I'll give you another bit just to respond to that, take the break from speaking here. So a few more still to respond there. If we can get feedback, that would be awesome. And then let me close that and share that back. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I feel like I've scared everybody away from doing a custom master page. There's still a few folks looking to do that, but certainly the SharePoint themes and alternate CSS are providing a lot of attraction there. And we actually see a hybrid approach making a lot of sense. That you may have a highly customized communications portal that you want to have a custom master page on it, but then as you drive down into the collaboration parts of the site, using the out-of-the-box SharePoint theme and alternate CSS is a great way to do that and provide the best of both worlds through there. A few folks from an Office 365 themes point of view, I imagine that Microsoft will build on that and give us more control there, but there's only so much we can do with that right now. I want to do the same thing from a navigation point of view, and just get a sense there as well. So we talked about the out-of-the-box SharePoint navigation, whether that was structured or using the term store. And we've got our farm solution control, we tend to use from an on-premises point of view. I mean, that gives the best user experience, but unfortunately we can't use it in an Office 365 point of view. We've got the client-side JavaScript control, and then I was mentioning the generated navigation. That's the approach we're looking at using with OCAS, where as the content author makes changes to the navigation, they click a link, generate a new file. That's what everybody else navigation drives from. So that's what we see as the nicest balance between the full farm solution and the client-side JavaScript. So again, just give you a minute there to respond. And let's just close that and share that back. So a lot of folks looking to stay within the out-of-the-box SharePoint. So that's a good point for us to understand, how much should we invest from building the custom navigation point of view versus what can be done out of the box. Probably the biggest concern I have with the out-of-the-box is just the ability to support multiple site collections. That gets a little messy from that point of view, and that's something most of our clients tend to hit fairly on through there. Okay, let me just hide that. A couple more slides that I want to take you through here just before we wrap up. So we've done the navigation poll. Pension, actually another example from a fairly simple look and feel in Office 365 point of view. Just recapping on some of our recent sessions. So this is the third in our series of 3 Office 365 June series. So the first was sort of an all-up what's in 365. The second one was talking more about the design of the information architecture and migration, how do you move your content into that, and then the one today on user experience, branding, and navigation. So the previous 2, the recordings are up and available. You can stream those down. This one will be available tomorrow once we've got the video converted and uploaded through there. We are starting to put together our thoughts for upcoming sessions. So there's a number of different topics I'd actually like to socialize out and just see where people's interests are. So one of them is just a comparison of the various different Office 365 and SharePoint on-premises licensing. Microsoft doesn't tend to make licensing a simple thing. There's a lot of different options on both sides. On-premise, you have to think about not just SharePoint, but SQL and Windows Server and lots of other bits in there. Office 365, there's a lot of different plans that bundle up different components of Office 365, even the Office desktop licenses as well as part of that. So just kind of walking through what those scenarios are, and for different types of organizations, whether you're a for-profit organization, government, school, not-for-profit, registered charity, they all have their own variations within that as well. So that's one of our thoughts. Next one was around the cross-site publishing, what I was showing you briefly on the Shakespeare site, this idea that you can have content authored in one place and have it bubble up and surface in multiple other places, whether that's multiple areas of the intranet. We're actually going to be doing this for L3 Westcam, where news can be posted in the department sites, can bubble up to the home page or vice versa through the cross-site publishing, sharing between the public website and the intranet, or even multiple websites. We've done projects for organizations like Simcoe County District School Board, where they have literally 100 plus independent websites on SharePoint using the cross-site publishing. Repeatable deployments, I mentioned the Microsoft patterns and practices, our focus on PowerShell from a deployment point of view, and really having a repeatable process that we can deploy easily into dev environments, into your test environments, and ultimately into your production environment in a safe and reliable and repeatable manner. So I invested a lot in that, happy to share ideas from that point of view. Hybrid we touched on, this idea that some of your stuff maybe stays in on-premises SharePoint, some of it lives up in the cloud. That may be from a regulatory data security point of view, maybe concerns while we're waiting for Canadian data centers, if it's things like personal health information or other private information that needs to stay in country. You can keep that in your on-premises SharePoint, but leverage Office 365 and all of its benefits for everything else. We're having a lot of those conversations with our clients now, and I showed you the example of what we're doing with our own intranet, extranet around that as well. And then the last one around Delve. This is a topic in of itself around search and discovery, knowledge management. How do you connect people and knowledge and documents together and really discover that knowledge within your organization? This is one of the biggest reasons I see for moving into Office 365. To a certain degree, it'll be coming into SharePoint 2016, but it'll still leverage the cloud. So you'll still have information going up into the cloud as part of that, even from an on-premises. So one of the compelling reasons we see to move into Office 365. So let me do a quick poll just to see across those 5 sessions which resonated with folks and how do we want to drive that forward from there. Let me launch that out. That's great. We're getting lots of great feedback there. Give you another 10-15 seconds. I know we're running up to the 2:30 spot. We've got one more point to go over, and then we're wrapped for the afternoon. So I won't share this back out just in interest of time, but quick update. Hybrid SharePoint is actually the one that's resonating with most people. That's at 71%. The licensing side and the repeatable deployments, hot topics there as well. That's great. We've got one more, which is just around format of delivering that content. We've got a couple of options. We can continue the existing webinar format, or I've actually done at a number of conferences, CollabCon here in Toronto, SharePoint Fest in Chicago and New York, full-day workshop sessions. Now, those are paid sessions. They're not free events, but just trying to get a sense. Are people looking to dive deeper face-to-face from a workshop format, or are they more interested in continuing from a webinar format point of view? So again, if we could just get your feedback on that, that would be awesome. It looks like webinar format is working for people, so that's great to see. Okay, so we do have a survey that's going to come up at the end of the webinar as a follow-up email from there. So again, if you've got specific comments, if there's topics maybe beyond those 5 that you'd like to see, by all means share that with us. We'd love to get that feedback from you. So from there, we're 2 minutes over. Apologize for the slight delay there, but I think we've covered a lot of stuff. Hopefully feed a lot of ideas around how you can tackle branding, how you can tackle navigation, both from an on-premises and from an Office 365 point of view. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thanks. Bye now.